It all began with a single moment, a comment so sharp, so unexpected, that it seemed to change the course of American politics in an instant. The tension had been building for months. The White House had been the stage for countless political dramas, but nothing could have prepared the country for what was about to unfold. In one corner, there was Donald Trump, the brash and often controversial sitting president, known for his unfiltered comments and explosive rhetoric. In the other corner, there was Barack Obama, the former president who had spent years cultivating an image of calm leadership, a man whose quiet dignity and poise had become his signature. The two had sparred before in the public eye, but this time, the stakes were different. Trump had spent months trying to undermine Obama's legacy, criticizing everything from his policies to his leadership style. Yet, it was Trump's latest verbal assault that set the stage for the most intense clash between the two men. Trump, never one to shy away from controversy, made a public statement that shocked many. He accused Obama of overstepping his bounds, implying that the former president should remain silent and let the current leadership take charge. The statement wasn't just an offhand comment. It was a direct challenge to Obama's influence and a blatant dismissal of his role in American politics. "You've had your time, Barack," Trump said, his words cutting through the air like a knife. "It's time for you to sit down and be quiet. This country needs real leadership." The words reverberated across the country. The media went into a frenzy. The world watched as Trump's words spread like wildfire across social media, news outlets, and the public consciousness. But no one expected Obama's response to this unprovoked attack. Trump had given Obama the perfect opportunity to strike back, to retaliate with equal force, to launch a public battle for supremacy. The nation waited for Obama's answer, expecting him to fire back, to reassert his presence in the national conversation. The stage was set for a showdown, one that was bound to captivate America's attention. As the days passed, the speculation grew. Would Obama respond? And if so, how? Obama had always been known for his calm, calculated approach to leadership. His responses, while thoughtful and deliberate, had never been the type to escalate conflict. He had spent 8 years navigating the rough waters of the political arena, often rising above petty attacks and focusing on the greater good. This was his style, stoic, measured, and always in control. But Trump's challenge was different. It wasn't just a political jab. It was an attack on his character, on his legacy. It was a direct attempt to diminish his influence and silence his voice in a time when his experience and insight could have made a difference. The question was no longer about policy or politics, it was about leadership. Could Obama stand aside while Trump continued his attacks, or would he show the country what true leadership really looked like? As the media continued to speculate, Obama remained quiet, almost eerily so. His silence only added fuel to the fire. People were waiting for him to speak. They wanted to hear him defend himself, to answer Trump's challenge directly. The pressure mounted. But Obama, as always, was thinking carefully. He knew that the decision to respond, or not to respond, would have long-lasting consequences. The narrative was already beginning to shift. Every moment of silence seemed to weigh heavier than the last. Obama wasn't just deciding whether to respond in a way that would protect his reputation, he was deciding what kind of leadership America needed at this moment. Should he fire back, matching Trump's aggression and fueling the division? Or should he rise above the chaos, demonstrating the kind of steady leadership that the nation needed most? The media had already begun painting the picture of what would happen next. Obama's silence was being analyzed. His aides were questioned. Political commentators debated. Would he fall into Trump's trap of escalating the conflict, or would he remain the larger figure in the room? Meanwhile, in Obama's personal life, Michelle Obama watched the entire spectacle unfold with a mix of disbelief and understanding. She had always known that her husband was no stranger to political adversity, but this felt different. It wasn't just about the political fight, it was personal. Obama, however, remained unfazed by the personal nature of Trump's attack. He knew that this was not a moment to react impulsively. His legacy, the values he had stood for, and the example he wanted to set for the country all hung in the balance. This was a test of character, a test of leadership. Michelle could see the weight on his shoulders, but she knew her husband. She knew that he would rise to the occasion, not out of a desire to prove himself, but because he understood what was at stake. "You've faced worse, Barack," Michelle said quietly, offering him a comforting presence. "You've been through tough battles. This is just one more." Obama smiled faintly, appreciating her support, but his mind was elsewhere. This moment would define not just his response to Trump, but the kind of leadership he wished to represent. After all, the country was watching, and the nation's expectations were rising with every passing moment. Obama, though accustomed to the public spotlight, knew that this moment demanded more than just a response. It demanded clarity, dignity, and an understanding of the deeper stakes at play. Leadership was not about revenge. It was about showing restraint in the face of adversity, rising above petty attacks, and delivering a message of unity. The world was waiting for Obama to speak, and this time, it wasn't just about politics, it was about the very principles that had guided his presidency. How would he handle this challenge? The answer was coming, but only when Obama was ready to deliver it in the way that true leadership demanded. As the days passed, the silence from Barack Obama weighed heavily on both the media and the American public. Trump's words had reverberated across the nation like a bombshell, but Obama, the former president who had handled far bigger crises, remained deliberately quiet. The nation waited for a response, but Obama wasn't about to be rushed into one. Instead, he took his time, carefully considering his options. The political climate was charged with tension, and every moment of silence only added fuel to the fire. The White House press room buzzed with questions, reporters speculating on Obama's next move. Would he fight back? Would he rise to the challenge? Obama's advisors were in the same position as the media, on edge, wondering how long the former president would remain silent. "He has to speak," one of Obama's closest advisors said. "The longer he stays quiet, the more it looks like we don't have a response." But another advisor, more level-headed, countered, "Sometimes silence is the most powerful response." Obama's strength lies in not reacting in the moment. He's about principle, not spectacle. The media frenzy continued to swirl around Obama's absence. Trump, meanwhile, was feeding the fire, holding rallies and giving interviews where he hammered away at Obama. "Why isn't he answering me? Why isn't he defending his own record?" Trump raged. "He's weak. That's what the people want to see. They want answers, and Obama can't give them." Trump's words were sharp, meant to provoke Obama into a public battle. It wasn't just about defending his own administration, it was about challenging Obama's entire legacy. But Obama, true to his character, remained unfazed by the pressure. At home, Michelle Obama could sense the toll it was taking on her husband. "Barack," she asked one evening, "are you ready to speak? People are waiting for you." Obama, sitting at their kitchen table, looked up slowly. He had been deep in thought, as he always was before making major decisions. "I know they are," he replied, his voice measured. "But this isn't about responding in anger. It's not about proving anything to Trump. This is about something deeper." Michelle nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "You've always taken the high road, and it's worked for you," she said softly. "But it's not just about taking the high road, Michelle," Obama replied. "It's about showing the country what real leadership looks like. People are watching us, not just for the fights we've won, but for the battles we choose not to engage in. If I respond in anger, I'm no different than Trump. If I fight back in the same way, then we've both lost." Michelle placed a reassuring hand on his. "I know you'll do what's best. You've always known when to speak and when to wait." Obama sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on her words. He knew this was not just a personal confrontation. This was about leadership on a larger scale, about setting an example for the nation and the world. The next day, the media buzzed with more reports about Obama's silence. News anchors speculated that Obama was avoiding a public response, perhaps because he didn't want to get into a messy, public fight with Trump. Others, however, saw Obama's silence as a statement in itself. The longer Obama remains silent, one commentator said, the more it highlights the difference between his leadership and Trump's. As Obama's silence stretched on, public opinion began to shift. People on social media were torn. Some felt Obama should speak out, that his silence made him seem weak or unwilling to defend his legacy. Others admired his restraint and believed that his silence was the most dignified response. "Let Trump rant," one tweet read. "Obama knows that he doesn't need to stoop to that level. He's the better man for it." Meanwhile, the pressure continued to build. The White House was being asked daily when Obama would speak, and what he would say. The constant questioning had started to wear on Obama's staff. "We can't keep quiet forever," one of his top advisors said. "Obama needs to take control of the narrative." But another advisor, understanding the importance of waiting for the right moment, countered, "If Obama speaks too soon, it'll feel like he's reacting. We need to control the timing. He's a man of principle, and he's going to respond when he's ready." Obama, still maintaining his silence, began to feel the weight of the decision he was facing. The question wasn't just when he would speak, but how. Every word he said would be scrutinized, every gesture analyzed. The nation was waiting for him to speak, and it was clear that his response would define how America viewed leadership in the future. It wasn't just about what he said, it was about the tone and the message behind it. Would he fight fire with fire, matching Trump's rage with his own? Or would he take a step back and demonstrate the true power of restraint, of thoughtful, measured leadership? The days dragged on, and the longer Obama remained silent, the more the pressure built. His silence, however, was doing something else. It was drawing people in. It was forcing them to think about the larger issue at hand. It wasn't just about who could shout the loudest. It was about what kind of leadership America truly needed. The longer Obama stayed silent, the more the country began to realize that the real fight wasn't about insults and name-calling. It was about how leaders respond to crises, how they lead with integrity, and how they manage public discourse. And as Obama continued to reflect, the question remained, when would he speak, and when he did, what would he say? The world was watching, and Obama knew that the answer to that question would shape the future of American leadership. The pressure on Barack Obama to respond was mounting. Every day that passed without a response from him felt like a ticking clock, one that was getting louder and louder. The world was watching, waiting to see if Obama would step into the fray. His silence had been deafening, a stark contrast to the combative rhetoric of President Trump. The media, political pundits, and the general public were all asking the same question: when would Obama speak, and what would he say? Would he rise to the challenge, matching Trump's verbal jabs, or would he remain silent, showing restraint and dignity in the face of personal attack? As the media storm intensified, Obama found himself caught between two paths. On one side, there was the pressure to respond immediately, to fight back, to defend his legacy, to reclaim his place in the political conversation. On the other side, there was the knowledge that responding in anger, lowering himself to Trump's level, would only escalate the situation and further divide the nation. Obama, ever the strategist, knew that the stakes were far higher than a simple political spat. This wasn't just about him or Trump, it was about the example he would set for the country. Leadership was not about shouting the loudest, it was about rising above the noise and showing strength through composure, through measured thought and action. As he sat in his study, reflecting on his next move, Obama understood that the decision was his to make. He had spent years in the political spotlight, weathering attacks from all sides, but this felt different. This wasn't just a political fight, it was an attack on the very principles that had guided his time in office. Trump's words weren't just dismissing Obama's policies, they were dismissing his very right to be a voice in the national conversation. And yet, Obama knew that this moment wasn't just about defending himself. It was about defending the dignity of the presidency, about standing up for the values that had guided the nation for centuries. Michelle Obama, ever the anchor for her husband, had been by his side throughout this ordeal, offering wisdom and support. "Barack," she said one evening as they sat in their living room, "the people are watching you. You know that, right? Obama looked up from the paper he had been reading, his eyes tired but focused. He nodded slowly. I know, Michelle. I know. Michelle sat beside him, her expression thoughtful. You've faced so much in the past, but this is different. It's not just about politics anymore. It's about what kind of leadership this country needs. Obama leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him as he reflected on her words. I don't want to be caught up in a shouting match, he said softly. Trump wants me to react. He wants me to fall into that trap. If I engage with him on his terms, I'm just as bad as he is. I can't let that happen. Michelle nodded, understanding fully. But you also can't let him attack the values you've worked so hard to instill. Leadership isn't just about being above the fray. It's about showing what's right, what's true, when the world tries to pull you into the chaos. Obama's expression softened as he turned to her. I've always believed that leadership is about doing what's right, even when it's hard. But this is more than a political fight. This is about the direction we're headed as a country. For a moment, Michelle remained silent, allowing her husband the space he needed to process. She knew that Obama was wrestling with something much deeper than just responding to Trump. He was wrestling with the weight of the nation's future, the values they had fought for, and the message his response would send. Finally, Obama spoke again, his voice steady. I've always believed that leadership comes from example. If I respond with anger, it's no different than what Trump is doing. But if I stay silent, I risk appearing weak, passive. I can't just ignore this. Michelle placed a hand on his. You'll find the right way, Barack. You always do. But the weight of the decision was still heavy on Obama's shoulders. He spent the next few days weighing his options. Could he stay silent and show strength through restraint, or would he have to respond to defend not just his legacy, but the principles of democracy? The pressure on Obama continued to build. The media was relentless. Headlines filled with questions like, "Where is Obama?" and "Will he speak out against Trump's attack?" The public was divided, unsure of what to make of his silence. His supporters wanted him to stand up, to show the strength they knew he had. Others, however, respected his silence, seeing it as a move of dignity and grace in the face of division. But the longer he stayed silent, the more the media questioned whether he would ever speak. Obama knew this was a delicate balance. He was not just defending his legacy, he was defending what he believed America stood for. He wasn't just a politician in this moment. He was a symbol of a type of leadership that transcended ego, division, and partisanship. The longer I wait, the more they'll twist this, Obama said, his voice tinged with frustration. But if I rush to respond, I risk making this about Trump and me. It can't be that. It has to be bigger than us. It was a thought he had been grappling with since the moment Trump's words had first aired. This wasn't about Trump's personal vendetta. It was about leadership, about what America needed and what kind of example the country deserved. Obama was no stranger to the pressures of the job. As president, he had faced countless challenges, from the economic crash to international conflicts, and he had learned the value of patience. But this was different. This wasn't just about dealing with a global issue, it was about facing a man who had no respect for the office he held and no regard for the history that had come before him. The entire nation was waiting for Obama's answer. His response would not just define this moment, it would define what kind of leadership the country was ready to embrace. And in that moment, Obama made his choice. He would speak, not out of anger, but out of responsibility. He would show the nation what true leadership looked like in a time of division. His words would come, but they would come on his terms. The waiting had become unbearable. The silence from Barack Obama was deafening, and the world had been watching, waiting for his response. Trump's public attack on him had sent shockwaves through the political landscape. It wasn't just an attack on Obama's legacy, it was a direct challenge to his place in the ongoing political conversation. It was an open call for Obama to remain silent and step aside, as if the former president had no place in the national debate. The media frenzy grew with each passing day. News outlets were filled with speculations. Would Obama speak up? Would he defend himself against Trump's harsh words, or would he remain above it all, holding his peace? The pressure on Obama was mounting. He had faced criticism and attacks during his presidency, but this moment felt different. This wasn't just about policy disagreements, this was personal. Trump had attacked Obama's role, his relevance, and the influence he still held over the nation. Obama had spent years setting an example of composure, of rising above the noise, and leading with dignity. Now, he was being pulled into a confrontation that threatened to undermine the very values he had championed during his time in office. For days, Obama remained silent, his every move under the scrutiny of the media. His advisors, his family, and even his supporters were urging him to speak out. The question everyone was asking was, when would he respond? Obama knew that his response would shape how the nation viewed leadership moving forward. It wasn't just about defending himself or his presidency, it was about showing the world what true leadership looked like in a time of division. As the pressure mounted, Obama began to reflect on what kind of leader he wanted to be. He had always believed in the power of calm, measured responses, in the idea that leadership wasn't about engaging in petty battles, it was about doing what was right, even when it was difficult. But this moment was different. Trump's words were designed to provoke, to draw Obama into a fight. Obama could feel the weight of the nation's expectations bearing down on him. He knew that if he responded with anger, if he fell into the trap of a shouting match, it would only make things worse. It would drag the nation deeper into the chaos of division. But if he remained silent, some might perceive it as weakness, as if he was conceding to Trump's attack. What would his silence say about the kind of leader he was? "You've faced worse, Barack," Michelle Obama said one evening, her voice steady as she sat beside him, offering the kind of support that only she could. Obama turned to her, his face etched with the weight of the decision. "I know," he replied quietly. "But this is different. This isn't just about me or him. This is about what kind of leadership this country needs." Michelle nodded, her hand resting gently on his. "You've always known when to speak, and when to remain silent. This moment doesn't need anger. It needs strength through restraint." Obama took a deep breath, absorbing her words. He knew she was right. Leadership wasn't about reacting in the heat of the moment. It was about setting an example. It was about rising above, not descending into the chaos. But still, the question remained, how would he respond to Trump's challenge? He needed to make a choice. His legacy, the future of his influence, and the message to the country all depended on his next move. "I can't get caught up in the back and forth," Obama said, his voice firm now, as he stood up from his desk and began to pace. "Trump is trying to provoke me, trying to pull me into a fight. But that's not what leadership is. If I engage in that, I'm no better than he is." Michelle stood, walked over to him, and placed a hand on his arm. "Exactly. You've always known that it's not about the loudest voice in the room. It's about the voice that carries the most weight. You've always led with grace, with dignity. That's what the country needs right now." Obama looked at his wife, his resolve beginning to solidify. "This isn't about defending myself," he said slowly. "It's about defending the office of the presidency. It's about defending the idea that leadership should be grounded in responsibility, not ego. I can't let this moment define me. I need to show what true leadership is." The next day, Obama made his decision. He would address the nation. But this would not be a response to Trump's personal attack. It would be a statement about the kind of leadership America needed, one that was rooted in integrity, calm, and responsibility. Obama knew the media would be watching closely. The world was waiting for his words, and he understood the weight of his message. The press conference was set for the following afternoon. As Obama walked toward the podium, the room quieted instantly. Journalists, cameras, and microphones were trained on him, eager for the first hint of what he would say. The entire world was waiting for his response. Obama looked around the room, his gaze steady and unbroken, as if gathering his thoughts for just a moment longer. He knew that every word he spoke would be scrutinized, but he wasn't about to rush through it. This moment was bigger than him, it was about showing America that leadership could be strong, thoughtful, and measured, even in the face of personal attacks. He began speaking, his voice calm, his words deliberate. For the past several days, I've listened to the noise. I've watched as our national conversation has been hijacked by division, by anger, and by petty personal attacks. But I want to remind the American people of one thing: leadership is not about who can shout the loudest or who can make the most noise. Leadership is about who can bring us together, who can find common ground in times of division. Obama paused, his gaze sweeping the room. It's not about ego. It's about the greater good. It's about putting the needs of the country above personal pride. And that's what I believe we need right now, a leadership that rises above the chaos, that remembers what it means to serve the people. The room was silent as his words sunk in. Obama wasn't just answering Trump's attack, he was reminding the country of what leadership should look like. His words were sharp, but they were delivered with the quiet power that had defined his presidency. He wasn't reacting to Trump, he was reasserting the values of unity, responsibility, and dignity. We are a country built on the idea that we are stronger together, Obama continued, his voice unwavering. And that's the leadership I believe in. Not one of division, not one that thrives on the chaos, but one that seeks to heal, to unite, and to move forward. That is the America I want to see, and that is the leadership I will always support. The applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was genuine. The room had been captured by Obama's words. It wasn't a battle of insults anymore. It was a moment of leadership, of clarity, and of responsibility. Obama had shown the world what true leadership looked like in action, and Trump's attempt to provoke him had only made Obama's message stronger. The moment Obama had waited for had arrived. His response to Trump's challenge, calm and composed, had turned the tide in the political storm that had enveloped the nation. But as he stepped away from the podium, his message was not just a response, it was a lesson in leadership, responsibility, and vision. The media, the public, and even Trump himself would now have to reckon with the weight of Obama's words. The press conference had shifted the narrative. Obama, not Trump, was now the center of attention. The world had just witnessed a masterclass in restraint and clarity. Obama's calm and collected demeanor, his refusal to engage in petty bickering, had won the room and the hearts of many. Across the nation, the response was unanimous. People were applauding Obama's leadership, not just for defending himself, but for demonstrating what true leadership in America should look like. It was no longer about personal attacks or soundbites, it was about moving forward, about uniting a divided country. Trump's base may have still cheered his words, but even they couldn't deny the powerful contrast between the two men's approaches to leadership. As Trump raged against the growing wave of support for Obama's dignified response, he seemed increasingly isolated. His angry tweets, his attempts to frame the debate around his own narrative, fell flat. The public's attention had shifted, and no amount of bluster could recapture the spotlight. Obama had made his mark not through his words alone, but through his actions. He had shown America that leadership isn't about who can shout the loudest or who can hold the microphone the longest. It's about the ability to rise above, to lead with integrity and humility. As Obama retreated from the spotlight after his press conference, the world was left to digest the impact of his words. The silence that followed wasn't one of weakness, but of strength. Obama had said everything that needed to be said. His response wasn't just an answer to Trump's attack, it was a broader commentary on what kind of country America should strive to be. He had called for unity in the face of division, for calm in the midst of chaos, and for leaders who put the country's best interests first, not their own egos. The message was clear: the nation needed to move past the constant infighting and return to the values that had once made the country strong, values like respect, dignity, and a commitment to the common good. Trump, meanwhile, was still trying to salvage his image. The back and forth continued, but it was clear that the fight had shifted. Obama had captured the moral high ground, and no amount of Trump's fiery rhetoric could undo the strength of his composed response. People began to question Trump's leadership more openly, wondering if he could truly lead a country based on division, disrespect, and personal attacks. Obama's leadership stood in stark contrast to Trump's, and the country had seen the difference clearly. For days after the press conference, Obama's words dominated headlines. The media, once consumed by Trump's rhetoric, now found themselves focused on the quiet strength of Obama's message. Across America, people discussed Obama's remarks, not just in political circles but in everyday conversations. Families, coworkers, and friends all had the same conversation. What does leadership mean? What kind of leader does the country need? Obama had answered that question with his response, "Leadership isn't about confrontation or control. It's about serving the people, uniting the country, and upholding the dignity of the office." Obama's response wasn't just about confronting Trump, it was about redefining leadership in a time when politics had become synonymous with chaos and division. His words resonated with those who had long felt that the political discourse had lost its way. It wasn't just about left versus right, it was about what kind of future Americans wanted. The country had been given a glimpse of that future, and it was one where integrity, dignity, and respect were at the forefront. As the days passed, Obama continued to maintain his quiet strength. He did not revel in the victory of the moment. He did not seek the limelight. Instead, he continued to show the country what it meant to be a leader in the truest sense of the word, by putting the country first, and letting his actions speak louder than any words could. Trump, meanwhile, continued to lash out. His response to Obama's success in shifting the narrative was predictable: angry tweets, fiery speeches, and endless claims of fake news. But the damage had already been done. Trump had failed to draw Obama into the chaotic spectacle he had hoped for. Obama's composed, principled response had stripped away Trump's false narrative and revealed the fundamental difference between their approaches to leadership. In the end, it was clear, Obama had won. Not because of his quick retorts or sharp jabs, but because of his steadiness, his conviction, and his ability to rise above the storm. He had shown the nation that leadership is not about how loudly you speak, but about the substance of your actions and the principles you stand for. The country had witnessed a pivotal moment, a moment that reminded them of what true leadership could look like. Obama had not only responded to Trump's attack, he had reshaped the conversation, leaving the nation with a powerful message about the kind of leadership it truly needed. The legacy of that moment would resonate for years to come, not as a battle won by words, but as a victory for the values that should guide any leader: integrity, dignity, and the responsibility to serve the people above all else.